Welcome to 'Cause We're Nerds, the podcast that covers trends and new releases in comics, movies, video games, board games, and much more. I'm your host, Zach, and with me is my co-host and cousin, Caleb.
Hey everyone.
The movie industry just can't let franchises go into extinction as the 5th Jurassic Park movie is underway as Jurassic World Fallen Kingdoms hits theaters. How does this movie perform as a sequel, and does it live up to Jurassic Park standards? Find out these answers and much more on 'Cause We're Nerds. All right, Caleb, if you have been following the movie industry at all, I'm sure you have seen all the hoopla over Lucasfilms and how bad Solo, a Star Wars movie, is performing.
Yeah, it hasn't done really well at all. People just aren't going to see it. It's not that the reception is bad. People aren't in the theaters.
Well, we talked about the myriad of reasons why that could be the case, but there has been a lot of kind of behind-the-scenes shifting in Lucasfilms and pretty bad fake news reporting as well. Were you up to date on that at all?
Oh yeah, I saw all that stuff. Them saying that they weren't going to be doing spin-off movies anymore, which I thought was incredibly short-sighted of them based on the failure of just the Solo movie. But that turns out that is not the case, and they are still very much making those spin-off movies, but they are reevaluating how much they spend on them and how they market them.
That is correct. Yeah. So, I mean, how it basically all started was fake news. The Collider on June 20th basically wrote an article stating, hey, Lucasfilms is going to stop all spin-off movies. And then you got a bunch of these comic book movie news article sites like comicmovie.com, CBR.com or whatever. And they pick up and basically just wrote articles and spread the news that, hey, Lucasfilms is going to stop everything. When in reality, that Collider article actually said that it was fluid. Anyways, Hollywood Reporter just came out with an article, I believe it was today or yesterday, and they set the record straight. They basically said that Lucasfilms is continuing with everything currently. However, what might, happen because Solo didn't do as well is that the budget might be cut from some of these movies, so they might not give it as much of a budget, and they are also just going to maybe keep a tighter noose around some of these intellectual properties that they have.
Right, and part of that, supposedly, is that they won't be hiring up-and-coming directors anymore to make these movies. I don't know if that was disproven or not. Do you know?
Well, so Caleb, fake news. You need to check your articles, man.
I did say that was, before.
No, that was good. So you sent me an article. This is from one of those comic book sites. I said they're okay, but they write a lot of fake news. So I looked into it. They're reporting from another article that was from the Star Wars Newsnet, which I don't know how trustworthy I would trust that site. And then they reported, I checked them, they reported from that original Collider article. So it all, again, goes back to that original Collider article, which was kind of disproven as false. So I wouldn't take any of that as legitimate.
Sure, but Collider is a reliable source. It's not like they're some tabloid that you can't trust.
Of course, no, but I mean, in their article, they state that a lot of this is fluid, that, hey, this might be the way, but hey, it might not be. And then, as I stated, Hollywood Reporter basically just came out and clarified it, and they never mentioned that that Lucasfilms will stop hiring directors, just that it will keep a better eye on the production process.
Right, which is probably a good thing for Lucasfilm, seeing as they've changed both of their spin-off movies in post-production and had all kinds of issues.
Now, in the movie phase, we also might be getting a Silk movie, ?
Yeah, so are you familiar with the Silk character?
Kind of. I'm familiar with Spider-Gwen, and I'm assuming Silk is kind of on the same storyline?
Not really. So Silk came into the Spider-Man comics as part of that original Sin storyline they did. And basically, the spider that bit Peter also bit someone else before it died. And that was Cindy Moon is her actual name. And basically, she got mostly the same powers Spider-Man did, but she couldn't control them super well. And then at some point, this guy named Ezekiel came around and helped her with that, and then stuck her basically in this vault to keep characters like Morlun from coming and killing her. And so she was kind of stuck in a vault for a long time, and then she came back into the world, starting in 2014 in Amazing Spider-Man #1. Now, she was not in the canon before that comic. All that was explained then. So she is a newer Spider-Man character, and Sony might potentially be making a movie out of her. I think that would be pretty cool, because I think that Sony is missing out on a lot of potential franchise material from the Spider-Man series.
You know, I feel like every 5 years they decide that the spider that bit Peter Parker actually bit somebody else. And so, like, in the next 5 years, it's like, no, it actually bit the Incredible Hulk, and you didn't know
Right.
that. And then, oh no, the spider was actually pregnant, and it's 100,000 offspring bit 100 more people. You know, it just every 5 years. But no, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it could be. She is different than Spider-Gwen is from a different universe. And so she's got her whole own backstory and everything relating to that universe. And Silk is more of a character that came in, and because they were bitten by the same spider, they actually have some kind of, like, mental telepathic connection, which is actually kind of cool. It doesn't sound like a great concept, but reading it's not bad. We also have some other news. MoviePass is super popular now. Zach, do you have MoviePass?
You know what? I do not, and the reason is because when I see a movie that I really want to see, it's going to be on Thursday night, and I want to go to an XDX screen, and I showed you that screen, right? So it has Dolby Atmos, a bigger screen, stuff like that you can't get on the MoviePass, and so if I'm not going to do that, I'm just going to go on a Tuesday night, and I still get recliners, I still get everything else, and it's $5, so I'm like, meh.
Yeah, well, you might be in luck then. MoviePass is making several different changes. I actually do have MoviePass. Courtney and I both got it this past Christmas for 6 months, so it's almost up. And, you know, we found it to be pretty awesome, actually. We watched a lot of movies that we wouldn't necessarily see in theaters, just because it's now free, which is cool. But part of their changes are they're implementing a bring a friend feature, which has kind of been a big thing people have been asking for, because when you go to a theater and you have to select seats, it's possible that you select a seat and then someone else purchases their ticket before your friend and you can no longer sit together. That is going to be an additional fee. That's kind of how most of these things are going to work. They're going to charge an additional fee, right? So this, they said that it's going to be close to the price of a regular ticket, which either means it's going to be slightly discounted, or they're going to go the Fandango route and charge an extra fee on top of the ticket price. So we're not quite sure how that's going to work out yet. The other thing that they're doing is they're going to allow you to upgrade your ticket to IMAX and Real D screenings for another small fee. So those are going to be like $1 or $2 to be able to see those films, which is really awesome, because I hate it when I want to see a movie and I'm like, well, I've got $12 paid for, but I can't actually use my card for the IMAX. So now you can bump that up. But there is one thing they're doing that people are not happy about. Surprise for MoviePass, right? Which is introducing surge pricing. Now, this is something that Uber apparently does. I was not aware. But basically, if there's a really popular movie or a popular time, they might charge an additional, again, $1 or $2 fee for you to see it during that time.
Then, I mean, MoviePass just came out not too long ago, so I'm sure they're going to continue to make changes, continue to either up prices, lower different prices, you know, just choose on add-ons. It's a business, so they're just continuing to try to make money.
Well, you know, MoviePass has actually been around for a lot longer than you think. I have a friend that had it like 3 or 4 years ago. It's gone through several iterations since then. But yeah, they're basically trying to not hemorrhage money like they've been doing, because I read an article that was saying I think they were spending like $50 million a month earlier this year because of all the money they're losing. So they're just trying to figure it out.
Makes sense.
Now, on the other side of that, for people that aren't happy with MoviePass and all the changes they keep making, AMC is starting their own subscription plan, which is really surprising because they've come out several times in the past and said MoviePass is not sustainable. I guess this is their version of a sustainable one. It's an extension of their AMC Stubs program. This is called AMC Stubs A-List, and I think it's $20 a month, and you can see 3 movies a week. That's any movies. It can be IMAX, it can be regular, it can be 3D. And it also includes all the perks of the regular AMC Stubs program.
That's interesting. You know, I don't go to AMC theaters because around here, AMC is like $13, $14, $16 for a movie, right, where a regular theater is going to be like $8. So they really jack up their prices.
So where I am, AMC is like a regular ticket price. Like it's still going to be that $12, but that's most places you go. And then there are some cheaper theaters. There's like a NCG theater close to where I live that you can get like $8 tickets. We've started going there a lot more. If the AMC was closer to my house, I probably would go in on this because I love AMC theaters. I think they're very quality. I do think they are at a premium though. And the 3 movies a week I think is really cool because, MoviePass, you can do unlimited movies, but again, their rules are always changing, and you're kind of worried that, maybe one day you're going to go see a movie and you won't be able to. But with AMC, it seems much more set in stone. Like, this is what you get, we're not changing it. Done.
Now, are there any, red tape around that? For example, can you see the same movie twice out of those 3 movies? Because I'm sure if not, they're going to start adding a lot of kind of add-ons to that subscription plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. There are a couple things like that. You can see the same movie multiple times. The biggest thing that I saw was that if you're going to use them in the same day, there has to be a 2-hour gap between the showtimes of the films. But other than that, that's pretty basic. Like that shouldn't be an issue.
No, sure. That totally makes sense, but I would definitely just keep an eye out for caveats that they will add later on. Now, Caleb, moving on from movies, going to television, we have some other interesting news. The first of that involves The Walking Dead Season 9, and that Jon Bernthal, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I could have just butchered it. Bernthal, who you might know from the Punisher series on Netflix. He will be returning. He plays Shane on The Walking Dead, or did for 19 episodes, and he'll be returning for Season 9 for just 1 episode. So the speculation is that he's going to return when Rick leaves, and if you know The Walking Dead, Shane is dead. Like, he is definitively dead. Mm-hmm. He was killed, and then his zombie body came back, and then they killed that. So he's not coming back in person. He's most likely either coming back as a flashback, or possibly he could also come back if Rick's maybe going crazy and he's hallucinating. And so it's probably one of those in that we'll see him, and most likely we'll see him the time that Rick Grimes leaves the show.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do this, but I would not be surprised if it's like a Rick dies and then he kind of like walks off into heaven and Shane is there and he meets him, because prior to him dying, they were really good friends. They were best friends. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go that route. But it is interesting to hear that he's coming back after so long. I mean, it's been like 7 years, I think, since he's been on the show last. So that's crazy. But The Walking Dead the comic book is written by a guy named Robert Kirkman, who also writes another comic book, Zach, called Invincible. Are you familiar?
I've heard good things about this. This is a superhero comic book. And basically all I know is it's kind of bloody.
Yeah, so it is not for kids. It's very intense. I have never read it, but I've also heard nothing but great things from it. It's basically a child of a superhero, right? It's like the Superman character is this guy's dad, right? And he kind of has to live up to that, and he's inherited powers. This was getting a live-action movie, which I think is still in development, from Seth Rogen and another guy. But It is also now getting an animated series, which is going to be only 8 episodes, so very short. So hopefully they're not going to be like stretching stories out over a long time. And it is going to be adult focused. So this is pretty interesting. I'm kind of excited to see this because I've wanted to go into that comic for a while and just haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I'm not excited for this live adaptation that Seth Rogen's going to be working on. That doesn't excite me at all. But this animated short 8-episode series will definitely get me hooked. I can watch that. I can set aside that time, and it's something different. It's not like the Marvel or DC films we get. It's animated. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Right, and I kind of wonder if this might take that place of like the Deadpool show that was going to be coming out, of an adult superhero-based show. I think that those could be very lucrative if done correctly. We also got some new information on DC's new streaming platform, the DC Universe, and this is pretty cool. So it's supposed to apparently launch in August. Now, this information was not revealed via a press release or anything. This was revealed via a person named Danny Snow, who is the community manager on the project. So you can take this as real fact. It is supposed to launch in August. But more interesting is it's not only going to include movies and TV shows, but also comics.
So they're like online comic streaming service?
Yeah, so it's almost more like an online content service, like not movies, not TV shows, just whatever they want to throw at it. I don't know how that's going to work on like a set-top box, like an Apple TV or a Roku. It kind of seems like that would have to be restricted to more of a computer-based thing, like an iPad or a phone or a computer, something like that. But I think that including comics is actually a really genius move.
No, I love that idea. You know, I could see it working on TV. My assumption is it's going to be a platform, right? You log in, you can choose what you want to do, TV, movies, comics. So if you're on the TV and you want to try reading a comic from your TV, go for it. It's not going to work really well. And for that, you're going to need to log into your computer, your phone, and then, you know, absorb the comic that way. But I like it. You know, you can get all your content in one place. So if you're a DC fan, this is a huge win.
Yeah, Marvel has been pushing digital comics for years, and I love their digital comics platforms. So if DC's is anything like that, then I think that's going to be a really big step up for them.
Exactly.
All right, well, moving on to comics, we've got a couple things. Zach, we talked about a few weeks ago the Spidergeddon event that Marvel was teasing. It has now been revealed that this is going to be kind of like a follow-up to the Spider-Verse storyline that they did a couple years ago. But the big piece of news for this is that the Spider-Man from Spider-Man PS4 is going to debut in the comics, and he will be part of the official canon now.
So I thought the Spider-Man from the Spider-Man PS4 was just kind of like a regular Peter Parker Spider-Man. Is he somehow different?
Well, I mean, we don't really know, but it's set in a different universe, right, than the comics version. And so they're pulling him in from his universe into this, sort of like they did in Spider-Verse. Like they went back and they saw the Spider-Man from the 1960s. They referenced Spider-Man from the movies. It's just cool that they're bringing them over because it's kind of that cross-pollination you don't typically see between comics and video games.
So are they going to call him the video game Spider-Man? I don't know. It just seems really weird, to be honest. I do know, I won't say what it was, but it was actually spoiled what the sixth member of the Sinister Six was in that video game. I believe one of the cast members or voice cast members actually said who it was. And so that's definitively known. But I won't spoil it, but it is definitely interesting.
Right. I will say that, personally, I don't think it's a spoiler because I feel like that character is kind of a must-have in games, but we won't talk about it here.
But we guessed it. I'll just say we kind of talked about it. So if you're really interested, go back to our E3 podcast, listen to it. One of our guesses was correct. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. In some other news, Zach, this week, well, by the time this episode comes out, it will be a week ago. X-Men Gold number 30 came out. Now, this was a really big issue that they'd been building up towards, and basically the whole premise of it was going to be that Colossus and Kitty Pryde were getting married. Now, there is a big twist in this comic, and the problem with that is that once again, Marvel has spoiled it in the newspapers one day before it's released.
Come on, Marvel.
Why do they keep doing this?
Did they themselves state the twist, or was it leaked?
Yeah. No, it was them doing like a press release style thing. Like they've done this many, many times in the past.
All right, so some marketing interns getting fired.
No, I don't think so. I mean, this has been going on for, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years now, where there'll be some kind of big story coming out, and they spoil it. Like I remember they did it with, I mean, it was kind of in the title of that comic, but when the Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter Parker, died, they did a whole news thing with it, and they were reporting that Spider-Man is now dead, and it's like, I just don't get it.
Yeah, that's a very strange move for Marvel. Maybe they're trying to get more attention to the comic book so people will buy it, and so they go, oh, there's some type of twist. I have to get it. Maybe. That would be my only guess.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of too, but I'm not a fan of this. Comic readers are not a fan of this because you cannot avoid the news. So, I mean, it's just really not cool.
That's very true. Now, jumping from comics to video games, we do have a very interesting news article on video games. That is that Bethesda is suing WB over their Westworld video game. So, have you played... And the video game that they're suing over is the Fallout Shelter. So, there's the Fallout Shelter video game, and then WB just released a Westworld video game. Have you played either of those video games?
I haven't played either of them. I've seen Fallout Shelter, and I think I knew that a Westworld game was coming out, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, so they're both free to play, so you can just download them on your phone or tablet or whatever and get going. But it's kind of like a resource production game. Basically, what you should do is go ahead and Google this. Google like Westworld, Fallout Shelter side by side. If you look at the video games side by side, their layout is exactly the same. You can kind of think of, if you know what XCOM is, it's kind of like an XCOM layout where you have your base, but the base is situated at the bottom, and then you have like these little rooms all throughout, and that kind of incorporates your entire screen. It's like a super identical replica. Now, the reason behind this lawsuit is that Bethesda hired, I can't remember the company, but they hired this company to do some asset work for them to develop the game they did. And then later on, when WB wanted to release their Westworld game, they hired the same company. So the idea is that this company has recycled some of the same components that it used, which is highly likely because once you create an asset, you kind of want to recycle that. But if they made the video game exactly the same, then this lawsuit is definitely going to go through the courts.
You know, that's really interesting. This is always an issue with video games. It's kind of like the same thing with Fortnite when they were doing all of that lawsuit stuff, like, oh, it's Battle Royale, now we're doing Battle Royale. You can't really sue people over a genre or type of game. And I'm looking at screenshots now. This is the first I've heard of this. They do look very similar, but this is not something new to Fallout Shelter. This has been in other games plenty of times. In terms of the art assets, that is a possibility, but really the link is tenuous, right? I mean, the only reason this is being brought up is because the games visually look similar. In terms of their layout. Now, that's not typically decided by the studios that they outsource out to. That stuff is decided by the people that are actually making the game. All of that is on them. So if that's the issue, the gameplay, that's going to be on those original people. If it's the actual art assets, I'm not seeing anything that actually looks the same. It would have to be designed the same way. It can't just be like, it's vaguely similar, right? And so, I don't know about this. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. I kind of always laugh at these video game lawsuits because typically they don't pan out.
That's true. Typically they don't. It'll be interesting to see what happens in further development. I've played Fallout Shelter, and so I might give Westworld a spin since that's like my new show I'm watching right now. But
wait, you're watching it?
I am watching it, yes.
For the first time?
Yes, I'm on episode 3.
Oh, man. So I'm behind in season 2, but really good. All right, well, that wraps up our news. And before we jump into our topic, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, I do want to give a quick shout out. I was on another show this week, Zach, called Radio Labyrinth. I was on there with a guy named Brian Silverbacks, who is a comic artist, along with Tim Andrews and Jeff LaBeouf, who are the guys that run the show. It's a pretty awesome show. We had a great time. We talked about Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel, a whole range of things. You should go over there and check it out, but please do be warned, while we try to keep our show family friendly, that show is definitely not for the family. It's for the adults. So please just be aware of that before you pop it on with your kids around.
All right, so we are now jumping into our headline of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. As always, we will do a spoiler-free review and then jump into spoilers. Now, Caleb, I saw this Thursday night with some friends, and after watching it, I turned to my friend Darnell and I was like, okay, what are your thoughts on this movie? And he said, it was fine. And you know what? That sums up my exact thoughts. Those 3 words, I think, sum up this movie. It was fine.
Sure. I mean, this movie was getting a lot of flack coming out, right? Like, everything I saw was like, oh, this movie is terrible. This movie is bad. And the box office is not showing that. So the first Jurassic World opened with $208 million, which was a really big opening. It was breaking records at the time. This one isn't opening quite as strong, but it is opening with a estimated $133 million, which is still really good. Like, that's good. The reason the first one was so high was partially because we hadn't seen Jurassic Park in a while. So people are going to see this movie, which is different from Solo. But I'm not really sure what the general consensus is. Have you been looking into that?
So right now on Rotten Tomato, it's 50-50. It only has a 50%, which is extremely low, actually. It'll be interesting to see after this weekend once more people kind of go into Rotten Tomatoes, go into Metacritic, and actually enter their reviews. My assumption is that this will have a strong opening weekend, and that after it, it'll continue to do fairly strongly. It's going to do better than Solo is my prediction, and that's because it's a dinosaur movie. So families can bring their kids. Kids love dinosaurs. People love dinosaurs, and so you can watch it. I don't think it's going to do as well as Jurassic World, and I also think that once word of mouth starts spreading that this movie isn't that great, it won't do as well. But it has Chris Pratt. It's a movie about dinosaurs, so it's going to do okay for itself.
All right, Zach, why don't you give us a very fast synopsis of the food?
About the food. Well, my dinosaur meat was very tasty, Caleb. A little chewy, kind of like chicken. So basically, it's everybody from the last movie, including these super two annoying characters that you see in the trailers, Franklin and Zia. We'll talk about them later. And they go to the island. They try to rescue dinosaurs. Something big happens. 2/3 of the movie is spent off the island, and that's it.
Right, and the big thing that's happened is in all the trailers. It's the thing that everybody was complaining.
It's the volcano, right?
Yeah.
It's the volcano. You see the volcano going off, and, the dinosaurs trying to run an extinction level event, even though that's never stated in the movie, which I thought was kind of odd that there's a volcano going off and that nobody ever talks about, like, oh, this is like how they died the first time, or this is an extinction level event for the dinosaurs. Like, nobody ever mentions that.
They kind of say things around that, but not that specifically.
Yeah, so that's kind of what happens in the first part of this movie, and, I would say we're going to save the second part maybe for spoilers when we dive into that. I would say the first part of this movie is the best part of this movie. In my opinion, the third, when they're on the island, is the best, and after that, the movie kind of goes downhill. I will also say what's really interesting is that in the movie, they say that this volcano has been dormant, and that in the last 3 years, it has now, obviously getting to the levels of erupting. You would think if you're going to build a park on an island, and you're going to spend millions of billions of trillions of dollars creating this park and dinosaurs, that you would actually do some geographical, geo something, right? You would look and be like, hey, there's a volcano on this island. It looks like it maybe react in the next 20 years. Maybe we should move this park to another island.
Well, as far as I know, volcanoes are fairly unpredictable, so even if they did do that survey, it might not say that it's active. I think that the volcano actually really fits the world of the dinosaurs, so that's probably a driving factor for why it was there. I mean, we've got volcanoes on Hawaii where people actually live, and, that's not really an issue most of the time. So I don't think that's a big deal. I will say that based on the trailers, this movie was different than I expected, although I have been avoiding a lot of the trailers so that I didn't know what was in this film. I am glad that they got the island over with so quickly. Like you said, that is kind of like the first third of the movie. Maybe not even the first third. It might be a little less than that. And I do agree that is probably the most exciting stuff. There is some good stuff in there. We'll talk about it in spoilers. I have an issue with the cast just because it's the exact same formula we've gotten every single time, right? We've got 2 adults, a guy and a girl, and we've got 2 kind of kid characters, a guy and a girl, and one of them is techie.
That's actually so true. And it's usually the boy who's techie, and it's the girl who's rough and tough.
Right. In the first movie, the first Jurassic Park, it was the girl that was techie, because she's the one that hacked in. I also have an issue with the hacking in this movie, just because I'm a computer scientist, and it's not how these things work. You're not just going to be able to be some random dude going and be like, oh yeah, I'm unlocking the door. Why wouldn't they have tech people there already that know how to unlock the door? Why is this kid doing it?
Exactly. I mean, so I would say if you're going into this movie, just be aware that the whole movie won't take place on the island. Be ready there are some twists in this movie. Mm-hmm. My big issue with it is that this movie does not have a focus. Story-wise, well, kind of. Plot-wise, well, kind of. But there's no, main emphasis that they're going through. They kind of throw maybe 6 or 7 tangents out there about different ways this movie could go and kind of develop, and what is the thing that they're trying to push with the audience? And they never really get at that for me. And so it's a little lackluster. It's a little slow in the beginning, even though the first part on the island is the best part in this movie. And so I would say, yeah, this is a good movie. I would go see it in theaters, but I will probably not watch this movie again. I would watch Jurassic Park again or Jurassic World again, but as far as this movie goes, It was fine.
Yeah, I actually think that the opening of this movie is really good. I mean, I think the opening scene specifically is really good. I do have some issues with some dumb people that we will probably get into a little bit more in spoilers. I think that's just an issue with movies overall. But I think the pacing of that first whole island part is actually really good. And it does seem a little disfocused. I think there's two main things that they try to focus on. Even though there's a lot of other stuff going on, I think the movie's a little bit too long. I think they could trim some of that out. Visually, though, parts of this movie are very just fine, and parts of it are spectacular. I mean, there are some shots in here that I would hang on my wall.
Yeah, the visuals, I mean, are amazing. And that's why you go to see these movies, right? Because you want to see dinosaurs, you want to see, all that stuff. I will say that in the movie, and I mean, you can just predict this, that there's always a dinosaur chasing somebody, right? There's always like a T-Rex or a dinosaur chasing somebody. Caleb, at the Minnesota Science Museum, they have this simulator where you can try to outrun a dinosaur from it counts down to 3 and you basically just run 60 feet to see if you can outrun a T-Rex. It is practically impossible to outrun a T-Rex just when they start. So now whenever I see somebody trying to outrun T-Rex, I'm like, no, that is impossible. You could, even if you got a head start, they would catch you with 2 feet and kill you.
Yeah, well, there's a lot less of that in this movie than there was in the last one. I mean, the climax of Jurassic World was literally them running from the Indominus Rex. The running that's in this movie is a little bit different. I think it's a little bit more well thought out. It's not literally just running in a straight line. I won't say any more than that right now. But I think that's also kind of an issue with this film in general, is it's a bit derivative. I've seen Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, and this one. I have seen, I think, 2 and maybe 3 at some point. I don't really remember them, but parts of those movies kind of find their way into this movie. And so it doesn't really feel super fresh a lot of the time. There are ideas towards the end that do feel new, but they don't feel like they went as far with it as they could have or should have.
And Caleb, you say derivative. I would agree with you, and I would also add on to that this movie, you can suspend your belief, right? I mean, it's dinosaurs, so you suspend your belief for a lot of things, but a lot of stuff just happens by coincidence. It just seems like sloppy writing. At the last second, somebody's able to do something. At the last second, something happens. At the last second, it's angled the right way, or somebody's able to move this way. And it's just super contrived. And so for the first few times that happened, I'm like, okay, that's normal movie. But by the 40th time that happened, I'm like, are you kidding me? Is Chris Pratt and all the other characters just surrounded by a shroud of luck? How is this happening?
Yeah, I think part of that is because that's almost part of the Jurassic Park formula. I mean, a lot of that happened in the first movie. I can't remember specific moments in this movie where it happened, but I'm sure it did, because it feels a lot like the first movie and Jurassic World as well, I will say, which is a benefit, but also kind of a detriment, because we have seen them 5 times now. It's not a whole lot of new stuff. There's elements that they brought back from the last movie that play directly into the plot of this movie, which I wasn't really expecting aside from the island. So that's, I do like that. I like that continuity. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I think if they did something so simple as switching up the main cast, it's not 2 main adults and 2 main kids. Maybe it's just an adult, or maybe it's 1 kid and 1 adult. I think that alone would change how the movie plays enough to make it a bit more interesting. Now, that said, I do love Bryce Dallas Howard, and I do like Chris Pratt in their roles. The kids are fine. I do like the Asian girl better than I like the kid, the guy, the tech guy. Probably because she's a bit sassy and not what I was expecting. But it's just, I guess, not stale isn't quite the word, but it's on its way there.
That's right. So let's be in prayer that the 3rd movie never comes out, because this one was just fine. All right, Caleb, are you ready to jump into spoilers?
Well, actually, I am going to implement a new rating system for myself. You don't have to follow this if you don't want. I'm going to go ahead and give my rating so that people that haven't seen the movie, know what I think of it. Overall, I enjoyed this movie, but it does have some issues, right? So my new rating system is defined on how you should see the movie, how much money and time you should spend the movie, right? So the top rating is see it in theaters. The next one down is see it in a cheap theater, so you're not having to spend a whole lot of money. Then Redbox it, then Netflix it, because that's free, or just don't see it at all. All right? So for this one, I say if you're a big fan of Jurassic Park, see it in theaters. If you really don't care about Jurassic Park, it's probably like a Redbox.
I agree with you for the most part. I would say if you're a fan of Jurassic Park, see it in theaters / see it on a Tuesday where you can get it for $5. And if you're not a fan, don't see it at all because it's not worth it.
Okay, well, there you go. All right, let's jump into spoilers, Zach.
All right, so jumping into spoilers, the kind of first, I guess, big spoiler is that when they get on the island, they are betrayed by the army commander and all his troops, which is, I was expecting that. Like, they got on the island, right? And I'm like, okay, these guys are the quote-unquote bad guys. They're going to betray them. It happens. Some of that derivative stuff happens on this island, like I was talking about, like Chris Pratt. He gets tranked, and then the lava comes, and he's somehow able to climb up right when the lava hits, like when it's inches away from his face.
I actually
and then
liked
right
that
when
scene.
But here's the thing, right when he finally kind of figures out how to walk, seconds later we see him running. And I'm like, okay, How is that possible?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm being nitpicky. This first whole scene on the island was great. I also liked how this movie opened up basically with Jeff Goldblum, and it closed with him as well in that Senate hearing. So it kind of tied that together in a nice bow tie. But yeah, the first third of this movie was on the island, and then we get ushered off after that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Chris Pratt scene with the lava, it's not realistic at all. He still would not be able to move. He would totally be dead. But I enjoyed it because it was kind of funny. I mean, it was
funny, yeah.
Like, it almost hits his face, and he's able to get away. I did and didn't see the military betrayal coming. So when they got to the island and they saw him, I'm like, oh, well, that's rough and tough military man that's going to do stuff they don't want him to do. But then he started acting nice, and it lasted for quite a long time. And I was like, oh, this is so refreshing to have a military man in charge that is not just a jerk all the time. Like, he's actually nice. And I appreciated the fact that they didn't go that route. But then, of course, they went that route, and I was like, oh, well, that was
typical.
Stupid. Yeah,
typical.
So that kind of annoyed me. I was very happy that they did get, like I said, all of that over with very quickly. I think that the volcano exploding sequence was phenomenal. I think that while the CGI doesn't land every time, just because there's so much of it, it still feels very intense. There's a lot of stakes here at the beginning, I think, especially the way that our main characters basically get trapped on the island while it's exploding, which is really cool. I don't really think that they could have gotten those two out of that ball in the ocean with a knife. I find that hard to believe, but again, it's a movie. That's a little bit more nitpicky.
Again, one of the things I was talking about, right? Some of this stuff, you're like, could they actually do it? Like, but I mean, it was a good scene, right? And so then they end up on that boat, and that's when, some of them are sneaking around. I think this is when it's good to talk about the fact, and you touched on this already, Caleb, so I'm just going to briefly mention this, that I did not like Franklin or Zia at all. I thought they were both annoying as heck. Franklin particularly, he's a stereotypical tech guy, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I'm nerdy, I know how to hack, I hate dinosaurs, I hate the situation, and that's like, come on, like, don't stereotype that. And on the other hand, Zia was more bearable, I thought. I agree with you in that way. Actually, I kind of liked her, but okay, is her role something that people can actually, like, get a graduate degree on? Because she early on states, like, oh, I got a graduate degree, like, as a dinosaur vet. And
yeah,
like,
I think she says she's a paleo veterinarian.
Yeah, and then she was able to, like, locate veins and help this, and I'm like, come on, this is not, what?
Well, no, it's not realistic, but neither is having dinosaurs. Like, I could totally buy that there is a person or a degree in this world that gives you those skills, because, I mean, Jurassic Park, I feel like, or Jurassic World as it's called now, is kind of like their Disney World, right? Like, it takes a lot of people to get that up and running. It's a big deal. So, sure, there would be specialized fields that you could go into for stuff like that. Like, maybe animatronics for Disney World. You know, you don't see animatronics a whole lot of other places in theme parks typically. So I could go with that. I didn't have an issue with that. I do really have an issue with the stereotyping, like you were mentioning. I feel that the way they portrayed him was the way they would have portrayed that character in the 90s when they made the original movie. Like, it's not up to date at all. We have moved past that type of characterization, and it really hurts the movie, I think, when they do it. He himself doesn't annoy me a lot, but the way that he handles situations and the things he says, that is annoying to me.
So while they are on the boat, we go to the mansion, and this is when we meet Maisie, right? And we also meet kind of the evil character of the movie. And all the stuff that happens in between this time at the mansion, I thought was a little boring and a little strange, right? Because it's like, he's obviously trying to get all these dinosaurs to his mansion. Why at his estate? Okay, fine, whatever. Not a facility somewhere else, right? At his like actual home. And then he's trying to get buyers. And so that you kind of have like that strain going. And on the other hand, then it's revealed that he's actually created something different, the Indoraptor, something even more techie, and that's also going. And then you also have this idea that maybe the grandpa knows, and then what's Maisie going to do about it? And it's like all these very small details that I think don't really go together very well. And it seems just more busy time while our main protagonists are on the boat trying to get to the estate.
Sure, yeah, I could definitely see that. Some of this stuff could be cut out. I think the movie should be shorter. It's not too terribly long.
No, it's under 2 hours, I believe.
Yeah, and I don't have an issue with them taking it to the mansion, because that's where the lab is, right? And it's not where the villain lives. He doesn't live here, I don't think. That's where he works. And so they need to go to the lab so they can secure them there. That's the only place that they can hold them. That makes sense to me, but all this stuff with Maisie, I don't like it. It's revealed later in the movie that she's a clone?
Yes. Okay, one of the biggest reveals. This makes sense, because if they can clone dinosaurs from billion-year-old DNA, why can't they clone humans out of, like, recent... Like, so it makes sense. It's just out of left field. It's not needed.
Right.
And then they do nothing with it. They just reveal she's a clone, and that's it. You're like, what? They drop it after that.
And that's my biggest issue with it, is not that they can do it, because you're right, that totally makes sense. I don't have a problem with that. They kind of tease it at the beginning a little bit. Then they reveal it in a very non-built up way. Like, he kind of just gets told. She doesn't really have a reaction. Nobody else really has a reaction. Yeah. And the only way you could argue that it plays into the movie is in a very ham-fisted way at the end, when she releases the dinosaurs and says, "They're alive, just like me."
And it's like, wait, so you're not crying about this, you're not shocked, you're not like, I don't know, you're not running away.
Right.
You understand that you're just a clone, and you're like, oh, these dinosaurs are me? Like, what?
Yeah, I was complaining about this to my wife on the way out, and she was arguing in favor of it. She was like, oh, well, it's something new, it sets up for the future. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not what you judge a movie on. You don't judge a movie on if it sets up the future or not. You judge it on if it's good. And I do think that this is setting up things for the future. I think they should have saved it. I don't think there's any reason they should have brought it out here. In fact, when they were teasing it at the beginning, I thought, oh, are they going to reveal that she's the daughter of the original scientist from Jurassic Park, the woman?
Yeah, which would be cool. That'd be cool.
Yeah. And I was also wondering, is this the first time we've heard of this old rich guy that was with Hammond?
I think so. So it zooms up on him, and it's like, I feel like we should kind of know who he is. So I have never watched Jurassic Park 2 or 3. So I'm not sure if he makes an appearance or a name drop. I'm sure his name is dropped somewhere along this line. And he might even appear, which is why it's kind of like, oh, look, you should kind of know who he is.
Right. Because that's what I was wondering through this whole thing. Is this something they've created? Which is fine if they did. I just kind of would have liked to know. We also find out around this time that the main villain is the main villain, but the secondary villain is I think it's Wu. He's back?
Yeah, so he's back, and they first kind of portray him like a villain, and then I feel like they shift it because he's like, no, this is just a prototype. No, dinosaurs shouldn't be used this way. So they kind of shift him to good, but then he steals stuff and they shift him to bad again. Yeah. And it's very contrived, and he doesn't really play an important role in the movie at all. Like, they could take him out and the movie would be the exact same.
Yep. I think he's there for, what's the word?
Setup?
Nostalgia?
Like a third movie? Sure. Oh,
well,
sure.
nostalgia, because he was in the very first Jurassic Park, right? And they brought him back for Jurassic World. And they brought him here, which I'm pretty sure earlier in the movie they say he's dead, so I guess the world believes he's dead. And he's working for this guy, and he escapes again, so he's going to come back. I think he escapes, right?
Yeah, he does. He's still alive.
Yeah, and it's... I don't know. I also didn't like the ending with the dinosaurs. Like, I thought that they should have let them all die, and that would have been like a good conclusion to that whole part of it.
Well, so I have a huge problem with that ending, right? So it's that gas is leaking in, and so all the dinosaurs are trapped, and so you have kind of Claire, Owen, Franklin, Zia, Maisie, everybody's there, right? And so they release the dinosaurs from the prison, and so then all Claire has to do is press the red button to open up the door, and she decides, nope, I'm going to kill them. Which completely goes against her. You know, I didn't think there was a lot of character development at all. I mean, because for first example, Owen and Claire should be married, right? After everything they went through in the first movie, the fact that they're just like, yeah, I just left. Like, it was funny, but it's like, they should probably have been at least more, I feel like, romantically entangled by that point. Anyways, they get to this point, and Claire just decides, nope, I'm going to kill them. Like, there was no character development how she got from there, because like an hour, or not an hour later, but like 18 hours before on the island, she was crying because she saw all the dinosaurs dying on the island. How did she go from seeing all the dinosaurs dying to, I want to save, spending 3 years of her life trying to save these dinosaurs, to, you know what? They do need to die. There was no through line.
Well, see, I actually like that a lot. I see your complaint, and I think it's valid in some ways. But the whole arc is that she's going from saying, no, they need to be here, to realizing that human life is more important than dinosaur life. Because if she were to let them out, they're on a mainland now. Like, they're in America. They are going to get out. They are going to replicate and duplicate and have kids. And there is no going back. Like, saving the dinosaurs and taking them somewhere else or leaving them on the island is one thing. Bringing them to the rest of the world so that they can overrun it and potentially kill hundreds and millions of people is a whole other thing. And I think
millions is a stretch. I mean, there's like a handful of dinosaurs, and only a couple of them are actual carnivores.
Well, maybe, but I mean, a T-Rex could kill a lot of people. But if they have kids, right? And they mention in this movie that they're going to live a lot longer than they used to, because now they've got prime food, they well taken care of. So we don't know how long these things are going to live. Maybe millions is a stretch, but kill people. And so I think that change kind of starts when they see the, what is it, Indominus Raptor or something like that?
Indoraptor.
The Indoraptor, right. I think that change kind of starts there, when she's realizing maybe we've messed with this too much. And at that point, through those scenes, I think that's where she changes. So personally, I really liked that. I then hated how the kid just opened it up and was like, oh, no, forget you.
I know, and that well, okay, and here's my also complaint, and this is just a movie thing, right, is that the gas is leaking. They're like, we can't ventilate it, it's stuck in this room. Leave the dinosaurs in their cages and just open the door. The gas ventilates because there's fresh air, and the dinosaurs are fine. And
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, when they showed the door, I'm like, wait, so why didn't they do this in the first, like, why wasn't that their first thought? Hey, there's no ventilation. Why don't we just open this giant garage door and let the animals breathe, and they're still in their cages?
I will say, having been in science classes and doing things, that might work, but it also might not, because just because the door's open doesn't mean the gas goes out. The ventilation system actually sucks it out itself. So,
but try it.
Yeah, right. Try it at the very least. Yeah, I'm totally down with that.
Now, Caleb, you talked about the Indoraptor, and I think that's, I don't know, did you have a problem with it? Because I think that's my biggest problem with this movie as well.
So, I thought I would have an issue with that. I think that was in one of the trailers, they talked about it, and I was like, oh, they're just doing the same thing again, genetic splicing. But because they tied it into the Indominus Rex from the last one, I actually kind of appreciated that they took the bone and they were using that to further evolve it. And I actually like most of the stuff with the Indominus Rex. I was going to mention that's where a lot of the chasing comes in this movie that we were talking about earlier. But it's not just, running in straight lines like it literally was in the last one. Like, they're on rooftops. I actually love the scene where they're on the rooftop with the glass roof.
Yeah, I mean, it's a definitely interesting scene. See, my dislike of this is that you can't get scarier than the Indominus Rex, right? That was kind of, for me, the peak of the genetically modified dinosaurs, because, okay, you have the Indoraptor, and it wasn't as scary. And on top of that, it's like, it wasn't clear what the Indoraptor could do. The Indominus Rex, it's like, okay, it can camouflage itself. It has super tough hide. It can do this and that and that. The Indoraptor, they never state really what it can do. It's kind of controlled by a gun, so it's an army prototype, but then they're like, oh, it has 5 times the sense of smell, and it's incredibly smart. And so we see some of the smarts by it, like, opening up a door and figuring out how to do that. But earlier on, it isn't as smart because it's trying
there's times where it doesn't seem smart.
Owen and Claire, and it's not smart. And then really all you have to do is have the gun, and that's all you really need. And for example, the Indominus Rex, there were the 3 raptors against it, and it was able to defeat them all and then control them all, right? And then it took another dinosaur and a raptor. For the Indoraptor, it just took Blue to take him down. So it was just 1-on-1 versus 5-on-1.
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't the raptor that actually killed it. It was impaled. That's what killed it.
Yeah, but true. But I mean, still, it was a fall and a raptor, right? So I didn't like it. I thought it was a really bad genetically modified dinosaur that didn't have clear lines or guidelines of what it did. And so, that's why I said I felt like this movie was a little lackluster. It had villains, but it didn't have a clear threat. And then it didn't have a clear motive. Was the idea that now it's, dinosaurs should be killed? Is the idea, genetic modification has gone too far? Is the idea, genetic modifications helped clone people, and so that's what we should do? Is the idea Claire and Owen's love story? What is the main purpose of this movie? And I don't think the movie ever identifies itself.
Yeah, and I think that is a very fair complaint. I will say that while I don't really have a big issue with the raptor, I was hoping that it was going to go in a different direction, because I actually really like the idea that they're selling these creatures for military use. I think that's very interesting, and I think that when you start going into that and armoring them and using them in war, and you start talking about the cloning of things, that whole side of stuff, I really, really like that idea, and I was hoping they would follow through with that. They didn't. I think that's kind of what we're going to get in the sequel, which is definitely coming. And then there's other things in this movie, like I mentioned earlier, there's dumb people in this movie, and what I mean by that is there are several times in this movie where something big is coming, and people just stand there and wait instead of running when they know what's coming is a dinosaur. Why wouldn't you run? And there's other times where people have guns and they shoot something 2 or 3 times and then wait to see if it's dead. No, dude, unload the entire clip.
Keep going.
Unload and run. You don't stay there and wait. Why are we doing that? And they're doing it to build tension. I know why, but that is such a dated technique. In our day and age, your character actions need to make sense, logically. And I'm telling you now, if I'm standing there and I know that there's dinosaurs coming, I'm not going to wait to see what kind it is. I'm leaving.
You're running. You're out of there. No, that's valid criticism, Caleb. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's things like that through this movie, and it's fine. Ultimately, like we've talked about, they do end up releasing them into the world. I really hope that they take this opportunity to come up with something new, because pretty much all of the Jurassic Park movies are, like you said, running from dinosaurs. And I think it would be more interesting to see them weaponized, actually used in wars. I don't know if they'll go that route. But, with the Fast and the Furious franchise, it had to get so far along before it had new life breathed into it. And I'm kind of hoping that's where we are with this, where it's okay, we've done this stuff, we kind of did something new, now we're going to do something really new. And they are very clearly going to do a sequel, because not only did they set up for it, but there was an after the credit scene. Did you see that?
I did, yeah. So, I mean, the dinosaurs are all over the world, and the after credit scene is you got 3
pterodactyls.
Thank you, pterodactyls who are in Vegas on the Eiffel, on the Eiffel Tower in Vegas. And so it's setting up the dinosaurs are now all over the world. Now, my first thought was, this is dumb. They're just all going to die off. None of them can really procreate because it's only like one of them, like Blue, the T-Rex. A lot of them, there's only singles. There's not doubles, so that's impossible. But I don't think that's what they were trying to get at. I think it's more, well, now people and different countries, or different organizations can capture these animals.
Yep.
And now themselves have the tech to make dinosaurs or genetic modifications. And so it'll definitely be interesting. I mean, some of the buyers got away with the animals they bought.
Yep.
And so those dinosaurs are now going to be everywhere and in different countries. So Caleb, I think you're right. They're going to set up for something different. I don't know if I'm excited for that or if I'm hesitant to that. I think if this was the last Jurassic Park, Jurassic World franchise, I would be fine. But knowing Hollywood, they're going to have Jurassic Mars, right? Like the 15th installment. So they're going to just keep going, which is okay. I'm just going to stick with Jurassic Park, Jurassic World. Those were great movies. This movie, it was fine.
Yeah, and I will say, I was annoyed at the end credit scene, because unless it's a Marvel movie, I don't wait anymore. I look up to see, is there an end credit scene? And it said, yes, there was. And so I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and we got 3 seconds of just those pterodactyls flying. That's all we saw. I thought it was very unnecessary.
Yeah.
It was very unneeded. If they wanted it, they could have just put it at the end of the movie, because they were already showing dinosaurs everywhere else. It felt like they just had a clip that they really wanted to use that didn't fit, and they just stuck it at the end. And that was really annoying.
Somebody in the movie theater shouted, "That's it!"
The exact same thing happened in my theater.
People were pretty annoyed, yeah.
Yeah. So, but as much as I, rag on this movie, it's not a bad movie. It does need things that cut out of it. But, there's one shot we didn't talk about where the raptor is on top of the house, and it's in front of the moon. And I thought that was a really cool shot. And so there's cool stuff in here. But from a story perspective and from a logic perspective, a lot of it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, storytelling, not so great. Visually, amazing. You can come to expect that with any of the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World movies. I'm on board with you there, Caleb. All right, well, Caleb, I think that wraps up our discussion on Jurassic World. And you know who probably wouldn't run away from dinosaurs because he's too busy producing and illustrating and creating music?
Did you say illustrating music?
Sure. Taylor Poole has a myriad of skills.
Well, Taylor Poole.
That's right. While we're all playing checkers, Taylor Poole is currently playing chess.
Yeah.
Because he's so far, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
He's the genetic Indoraptor to our T-Rex.
Okay.
I don't know, but just go ahead, look up his music, TaylorPooleMusic.com.
Yeah, that's TaylorPoole music.com. And also, while you're waiting for our next episode, please do check out our friends at CNC Power Hour on Twitch, where they stream Magic the Gathering and video games throughout the week. And also, please do not forget to check out Radio Labyrinth for the episode that I was on. And remember, very much not safe for work or family.
And as always, go ahead and check out our website, cuzwe'renerds.com. Thanks for listening to 'Cause We're Nerds. Stay up to date with all the latest nerdy news and podcast drops by following us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. You can also leave us feedback or comments at cuzwe'renerds@gmail.com. That's CUZWERENERDS@gmail.com. As always, if you enjoy this podcast, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star review on iTunes. We can't wait to dive into a new topic next week. So until then, stay nerdy. No, I can give that. So basically, yeah. So basically, I can get that density down. Oh yeah.